Methane is more than 100 times more powerful than carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas, and that means that tiny leakages of unburned methane to the atmosphere are a big problem for the climate.
The crowds now have turned their attention back towards the police. Every so often, military helicopters sweep overhead, so up boos from the crowds.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Struggle is shown on over 30 cable stations from Vermont to New York City and in Washington, D.C. Our YouTube channel is Struggle Video Media, and you can see our shows at thestruggle.org. Today we highlight the grave danger to the world, to its climate, with an interview with top climate scientist Robert Howarth. Then video from Turkey from the midst of the failed coup, and Muslim protest against Saudi Arabia. Thousands are expected to rally in Philadelphia on Sunday, July 24th, to march near the City Hall around noon to protest what may be the climate activist cause of our time: opposition to fracking. Now, there has been some attention to what fracking has done to drinking water and land, and even radically increasing the number of earthquakes in Oklahoma. But the gravest problem is to the atmosphere, where this incredibly potent greenhouse gas is increasing in concentration by leaps and bounds. After my Skype recording software failed, I did the following interview via cell phone. I apologize for some audio fade out. I tried to compensate with subtitles. But please listen to the content. It's absolutely crucial. A few days before the big anti-fracking march in Philadelphia, I'll be speaking to climate scientist Robert Howarth. He's a professor of ecology and environmental biology at Cornell University. In 2011, he was one of the people Time magazine was considering naming Person of the Year, especially for a paper that he wrote saying that natural gas produced by fracking could have a greater global warming footprint than coal. In June, he gave a briefing to the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I saw you speak at 350 Connecticut and was startled to see you make an estimate that the world goes over 1.5 degrees centigrade in as little as 13 years. Could you explain why that number is so critical and how you arrived at that estimate?
Now, it's a critical temperature for sure, and the countries of the world came together in Paris last December at the COP21 negotiations to agree that it was in fact important to keep the planet below that temperature, certainly well below 2 degrees C. All of the climate models tell us that given current rates of greenhouse gas emissions, we're on a target to hit 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial baseline in a 12 to 13 year period. If anything, we're warming a little bit faster than this model suggested. The last year has been the warmest on record. And in fact, we're on target to hit 2 degrees Celsius, which is a very dangerous temperature in as little as 30 to 35 years from now. The reason those temperatures are dangerous, we're already warming the planet. We're already seeing damage from global warming. But the fear is that we will hit fundamental tipping points in the climate change system and end up in a situation of runaway global warming, at which point it'll really be too late to try to control our emissions. And there are a bunch of mechanisms in the climate system that could do that, either releasing carbon dioxide that's currently stored or slowing the rate of uptake by the ocean and natural ecosystems of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, or releasing methane that's stored in geological formations.
We're losing you a little bit. I know you're talking on a cell phone, but you said there might be a problem. If we go too hot, we get a feedback issue with methane. What would that be?
For methane, the issue, they're twofold. There's a massive amount of methane stored in the world oceans and the continental shelves in a form we call a methane class rate. It's sort of a frozen mixture of methane and water that forms under pressure and cool temperatures. It's actually above zero. It's not below the freezing point of water, but it's under pressure. If we warm the Earth's oceans, then we run a real risk of melting that. That's happened in the geological past, and it produces an incredible output of methane to the atmosphere. It'd be really, really devastating.
Now, you've been studying so-called natural gas, particularly natural gas produced by fracking. What's the problem with fracked natural gas?
Well, natural gas is mostly methane, whether it comes from conventional sources or from fracked gas. So, methane is more than 100 times more powerful than carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas, and that means that tiny leakages of unburned methane to the atmosphere are a big problem for the climate. And it turns out that in conventional natural gas, if you look at the time it's developed at a well through pipeline transmission and storage all the way to the final consumer, somewhere in the neighborhood of a little bit under 4% of it is leaked to the atmosphere. That's bad. But for shale gas, it seems to be about 3 times more, up to 12% of fracked gas is leaked off to the atmosphere.
You say 3 times more?
3 to 4 times more. Yeah, it's about 3.8% emission from conventional natural gas and about 12% from shale gas. So about a little over 3 times worse for shale gas.
Wow. So we have around 13 years to solve our global warming problems, and it's a short-run emergency, and now we have methane, and that's a short-run problem. As you said, 105 times more potent as a greenhouse gas in the short run than carbon dioxide.
That's right. And the thing which most people is carbon dioxide and methane are both critically important gases. They're almost equally responsible for the warming we're seeing at the moment, but they act in fundamentally different ways. In one way, carbon dioxide is worse. When we put it into the atmosphere, it's going to be with us for hundreds of years because it's taken up and then released again by the oceans and by the forests of the world. So that's really bad. But on the other hand, if we were to reduce carbon dioxide emissions today, it really wouldn't change the rate of global warming for the next 30 to 40 years, again, because of those interactions with the oceans and forests, which provide a lag. So by reducing carbon dioxide, there is no way to slow the rate of global warming and keep us below 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius. There's just no way. Methane's fundamentally different. If we start reducing methane emissions now, the planet climate system will respond very quickly and start to warm at a less rapid rate almost immediately. And so if we're serious about protecting the planet and keeping it below 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius, reducing methane emissions is really the only way to do that.
So it's bad news, but also it's the good news.
It's the low-hanging fruit for solving the problem, and we didn't fully recognize that until just the last few years. But the scientific community does recognize that now, and we need to get that message out to the public and policymakers. The way to deal with our global climate target is to reduce methane emissions.
There was a piece in the New York Times a couple days ago about methane and how important it was to make sure it doesn't leak. And the writer said the reputation of methane was hanging in the balance. I wonder if you saw that piece.
I did, and I agree that we need to try and reduce methane leakage and emissions. The track history of the oil and gas industry is not good in that regard. In the United States, the oil and gas industry is clearly the major source of methane emissions, and that's gotten a lot worse with the shale gas revolution through fracking. Again, we see this much larger increase of methane emissions, and this is a new phenomenon. Half of all the shale gas that's ever been developed has been developed in the last 5 years in the United States, and there's a big, big flux of methane associated with that. In fact, we can see from satellite data that there's been a global increase in methane over the last decade, and it's coming largely from the United States. A large part of it is coming from fracked gas.
So if fracking is not this bridge to the future that they claim, what do we do to solve the global warming problem in the next 13 years?
Well, the bad news is that, yes, fracked gas is no bridge fuel at all. It's quite the contrary. It's taking us the wrong way. That's the bad news. The good news is that we don't need a fossil fuel bridge. You know, the technologies for a completely fossil fuel energy economy are there or moving in that direction. Mark Jacobson from Stanford has pioneered this thinking, and he and I and others wrote a plan for the state of New York and also for California a few years ago, showing that we could be largely free of fossil fuels in both states by 2030 using technologies that are commercially available today, and it's cost-effective to do it. So we don't need the bridge fuel. We can move directly into solar and wind and hydro and into energy-efficient technologies like electric vehicles and high-efficiency heat pumps for heating.
Yeah, we faded out a little bit. I just wanted to get that name, Mark Jacobson. So you and he and others have been working on actual plans that would get the country fossil-free by, did you say 2030?
Largely free by 2030. Mark Jacobson has now produced a plan for all 50 states, an individual plan for each state. We published the first two of those with Mark, New York being the first one, and we said we could get most of the way there by 2030 and 2050 to be completely free of fossil fuels. And again, using technologies that are in commercial use today. We don't need to wait for big technological breakthroughs.
Okay, last couple questions. The rally is going to be, I believe, noon and around City Hall in Philadelphia this weekend on Sunday. Are you going to attend?
I am going to attend. I think this is a critical time in our society, and I'll be there for sure.
I came across this terrific graphic from New Yorkers Against Fracking and thought you'd like to see it. See you in Philadelphia on July 24th. In Turkey, elements of the military tried to stage a coup, and hundreds were killed before police and crowds of people forced the soldiers to surrender. Here is video from Oz Katerji, who reports from the legendary Taksim Square. His video includes a very exciting moment when a group of soldiers withdrew from part of the square.
Hello again. The police this time seem to be firing shots into the air to try and disperse the crowd. This has only aggravated the crowd. It hasn't made them disperse at all. Some of them have started running towards the police where the shots are being fired. It's quite hard to make out why exactly they fired those shots. I'm trying to walk closer to where they came from. Again, there doesn't seem to be any violence at the moment. Lots of anger and shouting, but there seems to be something going on down here. Some of the crowd are swelling down to the end of the street. I just had to hang up live on CNBC. Okay, the military. There's a military truck down there. They are being dismissed by the crowd. They appear to be leaving. Well, that's it. The crowd is celebrating. That's one truckload of military gone. Scenes of jubilation here as the military are dismissed from part of Taksim Square. Now the crowds go back towards the statue where the rest of the military seem to be camped. There are more and more people coming out to the streets right now. As I said earlier, if the military want to take control of this country, they are going to have to do so against the will of much of the population here. Crowd now walking back towards the statue, towards the top of Istiklal Street. This time This time they're going towards the police now. Okay. The police are surrounding their van. Sorry, guys. Clapping in the air. Turned their attention back towards the police. Every so often, military helicopters sweep overhead to out boos from the crowds. There is a palpable anger here on the streets of Istanbul. But still, it's yet to break out into anything besides protest. As I said, it is vastly unusual for protests to reach this sort of magnitude without crowd control coming into play here. Okay, and back to the status quo again. Quietly lined up against the military officers. As you can see here. Get right close. More firing into the air. As I said, the crowd not even phased at all by the gunfire. Extraordinary scenes here in Istanbul. Okay, tear gas has been fired now. Okay, the crowd has started to throw bottles of water towards the military. Some of the crowd are telling them to stop doing that. I think some people are backing up. There are definitely people trying to ask for restraint.
For years, a group of Muslims called the Baqee Coalition have been demonstrating against the Saudi regime's destruction of buildings and structures important to the history of Islam. This year, they talked about other Saudi abuses. This is from their press release. The Saudi government defies normal traditions by destroying the relics and shrines of all religions, including Islam. Baqee is a cemetery in Saudi Arabia where Prophet Muhammad's children, wives, companions, and relatives are buried. Since the destruction of Baqee in 1925, it has become a symbol of the atrocities and brutalities committed by Saudi Arabia and like-minded terrorist organizations such as ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Taliban, Boko Haram, and other offshoots. Also at the rally were speakers from CODEPINK, which is part of the coalition to end the U.S.-Saudi alliance. Here, with some video we got from an iPhone, is Medea Benjamin.
Thank you so much for the honor to come here and be with you and speak to you, because I think this is such an important issue. Not because I am Shia. I am not Shia. I am not Sunni. I am not Muslim. Actually, not being Muslim in Saudi Arabia is a crime itself. I am Jewish by religion. To me, this is not about a particular religion. It's about the right of people to worship as they please, to worship the shrines they want to worship. And whether it's in Saudi Arabia or anywhere around the world, people deserve the right to freedom of religion. So here we are in front of an embassy of Saudi Arabia, and we have to ask, in Saudi Arabia, do people have the right of religion even though it's a religious state? We are also right now intensely involved in the electoral season here in the United States. Are there political parties in Saudi Arabia? No. Are there national elections in Saudi Arabia? No. Does anyone vote for the Al Saud family?
Now Ali McCracken in front of the White House.
With a loud silver. She's here. Ali, she's here from CODEPINK organization. I would like to listen to her. Please welcome her with a loud salawat.
Thank you, everyone. Are you all staying hydrated? Yes. Okay, great. Well, I'm sorry that I missed the part of the embassy, but I heard amazing things about the rally there from my CODEPINK colleagues, Medea Benjamin and others who were just there with you. So my name is Ali McCracken, and I'm also one of the directors of CODEPINK. CODEPINK began, I'm not sure if Medea told you, but CODEPINK began when Bush was threatening to invade Iraq, a country that never attacked the United States of America. And when Bush wanted to invade Iraq in 2002, he instituted a color-coded terrorist threat alert. So maybe you might remember Code Red for high security threat, Code Orange. Well, a group of women got together and they said, hey, this system is meant to keep us in a state of perpetual fear to justify war, and they declared Code Pink for peace. So that's where we come from, and since then, we've been working for over a decade to challenge U.S. militarism at home and abroad. We're working to hold our government here accountable for indefinite detention and torture in Guantanamo, drone strikes that are killing children in Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia, the illegal and immoral wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the over 800 military bases across the world. We think that our government should be spending trillions of dollars on our communities and your communities instead of on war. So part of our work is also holding our allies accountable. Did you know we send $3.1 billion every year to Israel in military aid? That's $10.4 million every single day. Do you think we should be sending Israel money to occupy the Palestinians? No! Did you know we send Egypt $1.3 billion every year that the Sisi regime uses to jail and beat and even kill peaceful protesters and journalists? Do you think we should be sending billions of dollars to Egypt? No! But the biggest recipient of U.S. weapons is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is one of the U.S.'s closest allies in the region. The U.S. should know that our role in the Middle East has been a part of the problem that is contributing to the crises that are going on there now. So from fighter jets to small arms to even tanks, there are U.S. companies that are literally making a killing out of Saudi Arabia's killing in Yemen. And there's one company in particular that sells one of the most egregious weapons that we make here in the United States. And that company is called Textron, and they make cluster bombs. Cluster bombs are internationally banned by countries that have signed a treaty saying that they won't use these horrible weapons. But the United States and Saudi Arabia have not signed that treaty. Shame! Shame! Cluster bombs are the bombs that have hundreds of bomblets in them. They disperse indiscriminately over civilian areas, and not all of the small bomblets explode immediately. So oftentimes children pick them up because they're small and they're shiny, and they even look a little bit like toys. And these children and other innocent civilians are oftentimes maimed or even killed when those bombs detonate afterward. So Textron, the company, has its headquarters in Providence, Rhode Island, and manufacturing factories in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. And there are activist groups who are protesting every month outside of Textron saying, no more cluster bombs, and especially no more cluster bombs to Saudi Arabia. So I want to invite all of you to join Code Pink and other organizations like the American Friends Service Committee and Peace Action, who are holding the companies in the United States accountable for sending these horrible weapons, not just to Saudi Arabia, but all over the world.
And a Baqee coalition speaker in Los Angeles.
Walk around the streets and actually talk to the people who are walking by. Some of them are too shy, probably too nervous to come and approach us. So I ask us all, take a banner in your hand, walk around. If you see someone, tell them, could I take a moment of your time to explain to you why we are here today? And tell them why we are here. We are here to oppose ISIS. Many of my American friends, many of my friends back in London, UK, they always ask me, why do Muslims not protest against ISIS? If you don't believe what they believe, why don't you say something? Well, here we are. We're saying something. We're saying a lot of things, but unfortunately we don't have media coverage. So we need all these people on the streets to know that we are against ISIS, we are against extremism, we are against the killing of any individual, irrelevant of their gender, irrelevant of their sexual orientation, irrelevant of their faith, irrelevant of which sect of faith they follow. What we believe is that we have the right to coexist and they have the right to coexist, and that is what religion is all about. But Saudi Arabia wants to destroy this principle, and it is upon us to remind the people that the only thing that can keep these principles alive is our interaction with one another. Where I can look at an American and accept an American, and they can look at me as a Muslim and accept me. That is the only way we can tackle ISIS and their extreme mentality.
That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for The Struggle.